The distress signal came at 3 in the morning, ship time. Commander Jack Harris was asleep in his quarters when the alarm pulled him from a dreamless rest. He was on the bridge of the Starship Vigilant within 2 minutes, his uniform still half open, his eyes adjusting to the bright lights of the command center. "What do we have?" he asked, dropping into his chair. Lieutenant Amy Cole looked up from her console. Her face was pale. "It's Kepler Station, sir. Mining colony on the edge of Council territory. The signal is automated. It says they're under attack." Harris felt his stomach tighten. Kepler Station. His younger brother Danny worked there as an engineer. He had visited just 6 months ago, shared a meal with Danny and his wife, played with their daughter in the station's small garden dome. "How far?" Harris asked. 4 hours at maximum speed." "Do it." The Vigilant jumped to faster-than-light travel, and Harris spent those 4 hours pacing the bridge. He tried to reach the station on every channel. He tried to contact Danny's personal communicator. There was nothing but silence. When they arrived, Harris understood why Kepler Station was gone. Not damaged. Not burning. Gone. The main structure had been torn apart by weapons fire so intense that pieces of metal floated in every direction like leaves after a storm. The mining platforms were destroyed. The residential domes were open to space, their walls ripped away. Bodies floated among the debris, frozen and still. Harris stood at the viewport and stared at the destruction. He could not speak. He could not move. Behind him, his crew worked in silence, scanning for survivors, documenting the damage, trying to make sense of what had happened. Amy Cole approached him slowly. She held a datapad in her hands, and her fingers were shaking. "Commander," she said softly, "we've identified the weapon signatures." It was the Veth Dominion. Harris turned to look at her. The Veth were one of the most powerful empires in the galaxy. They controlled 32 star systems and had a fleet that dwarfed anything humanity possessed. They were members of the Galactic Council, though they rarely attended meetings. They preferred to take what they wanted by force. Why? Harris asked. Why would they attack a mining colony? Cole shook her head. "I don't know, sir. There's no record of any conflict, any dispute, any warning. They just came and killed everyone." "Everyone?" "Yes, sir. We're detecting over 2,000 bodies. Men, women, and children. There are no survivors." Harris closed his eyes. 2,000 people. Families, workers, children who had done nothing wrong, who had no enemies, who just living their lives on a small station at the edge of known space. And Danny, his little brother, who used to follow him around as a kid, who had called him just last month to say that his daughter had started walking. "Sir," another officer called out, "we're receiving a transmission from the Galactic Council." Harris opened his eyes. "Put it through." The main screen flickered, and an alien face appeared. It was Ambassador Ziltok of the Fenari species, a tall and thin creature with silver skin and large dark eyes. The Fenari were known for their diplomacy and their cowardice. They had surrendered to every threat they had ever faced and had survived by making themselves useful to stronger powers. "Commander Harris," the ambassador said in his soft, careful voice, "we have received reports of the incident at Kepler Station. The Galactic Council wishes to express its deepest condolences for your loss." "Condolences," Harris repeated. The word felt like ash in his mouth. "Yes, this is a terrible tragedy. However, we must urge you to remain calm and allow diplomatic channels to resolve this matter. The Veth Dominion is a powerful member of the galactic community. Any hasty action could lead to consequences far worse than what has already occurred." Harris stared at the ambassador. "They murdered 2,000 of my people. They killed children. I understand your pain, Commander. Truly, I do. But you must understand the reality of the situation. The Veth are too powerful to provoke. If humanity responds with aggression, you will be destroyed. The Council will work to secure reparations and a formal apology. In time, perhaps within the next several cycles, we can achieve a peaceful resolution. Several cycles, Harris said. That could be years. These matters take time, Commander. Patience is the path to survival. Harris looked back at the viewport, at the debris field that had once been a home for 2,000 people. He thought about Danny's daughter, about her small hands and her bright smile. He wondered if her body was out there somewhere, floating in the cold darkness of space. I'm going to transmit all evidence of this attack to Earth Command, Harris said. They will decide how humanity responds. The ambassador nodded quickly. That is wise. I am certain your leaders will see reason. No species has ever defied the Veth and survived. The Council cannot protect those who choose self-destruction. The transmission ended, and the bridge fell silent. Amy Cole walked to stand beside Harris. She looked at the destruction outside and then at her commander. What do you think Earth will do? She asked. Harris didn't answer for a long time. He watched the pieces of Kepler Station drift past the window, spinning slowly in the void. Somewhere out there was his brother. Somewhere out there were children who would never grow up. Parents who would never see their families again. Workers who had simply gone to sleep one night and never woken up. I don't know what Earth will do, Harris finally said. But I know what I hope they do. Cole looked at him. What's that? Harris turned away from the window. His face was hard, and his eyes were cold. I hope they remember who we are. He walked off the bridge without another word. Behind him, his crew continued their grim work, cataloging the dead and gathering evidence of a crime that the galaxy expected humanity to simply accept. But Harris knew his people. He knew their history, their wars, their refusal to bow to tyrants and murderers. The galaxy thought humans would be reasonable. The galaxy thought humans would negotiate. The galaxy was about to learn how wrong they were. The evidence from Kepler Station reached Earth within 6 hours. President Laura Kent watched the footage alone in her office, her hands folded on her desk, her face showing nothing. She saw the destroyed domes. She saw the floating bodies. She saw the weapon signatures that proved beyond any doubt that the Veth Dominion had attacked without warning or reason. When the footage ended, she sat in silence for a long time. Then she picked up her phone and made a single call. Convene the emergency council, she said. Everyone, now. Within 3 hours, the most powerful people on Earth gathered in the underground command center beneath the Capitol. Military leaders sat on one side of the long table. Diplomats and advisors sat on the other. At the head of the table, President Kent waited with her hands folded and her eyes steady. Admiral Greg Porter spoke first. He was an old man with white hair and scars on his face from battles fought decades ago. He had reviewed the tactical situation, and his report was not encouraging. The Veth Dominion controls 32 star systems, he said. They have a fleet approximately 3 times the size of ours. Their weapons technology is superior to our own. Their ships are faster, stronger, and more numerous. By every military measure, they would defeat us in open warfare. The room was silent. Everyone understood what those numbers meant. However, Porter continued, that does not mean we cannot hurt them. Human ships are more agile. Our crews are better trained. We have advantages in small unit tactics and boarding operations. If we fight smart, we can make them bleed. A diplomat named Richard Hayes shook his head. Make them bleed? Admiral, you just said they would defeat us. What good is making them bleed if we all die in the process? Sometimes dying on your feet is better than living on your knees, Porter replied. Before the argument could continue, the doors opened and Ambassador Ziltok entered the room. His silver skin caught the light as he walked to the table, his long fingers clasped in front of him. He bowed slightly to President Kent. "Madam President," he said, "I have come in person to help guide you through this difficult time. The Galactic Council is prepared to mediate between humanity and the Veth Dominion. We can avoid a war that would certainly destroy your civilization." Kent nodded slowly. "We appreciate the Council's concern, Ambassador. Please, explain your proposal." Ziltok seemed relieved. He had expected anger, resistance, perhaps even violence. Instead, the human leader was calm and willing to listen. This was a good sign. "The process is simple," he explained. "Humanity will issue a formal statement acknowledging the unfortunate incident at Kepler Station. The Council will then open negotiations with the Veth. Over the next several cycles, we will work to secure an apology and appropriate reparations for the lives lost. In exchange, humanity will agree not to take any military action and will accept the Council's judgment in this matter." "And how long will this process take?" Kent asked. "These things cannot be rushed, Madam President. Perhaps 5 cycles. Perhaps 10. The important thing is that peace is maintained." 5 to 10 cycles, Kent said. "In Earth time, that could be anywhere from 15 to 30 years. Time is a small price to pay for survival," Ziltok replied. "I have seen species make the wrong choice, Madam President. I have seen them refuse to negotiate, refuse to accept reality. Those species no longer exist. The Veth are not patient. They do not forgive defiance. If humanity chooses war, humanity will be erased from the galaxy." The room fell silent. Everyone looked at President Kent. She sat perfectly still, her eyes fixed on some distant point that only she could see. Then she spoke. "Ambassador, do you have children?" The question surprised Ziltok. "I do not see how that is relevant. Humor me." "Yes, I have 3 offspring." Kent nodded. She reached into a folder beside her and pulled out a sheet of paper. She began to read. Emma Torres, age 4. Matthew Cole, age 6. Sophie Park, age 3. Lucas Webb, age 7. Grace Lynn, age 5. She continued reading. Name after name after name. Children who had lived on Kepler Station. Children who had gone to bed one night thinking about games and toys and dreams, and who had never woken up because aliens from across the galaxy had decided to murder them. Without reason. The list went on for several minutes. When Kent finished, she set the paper down and looked at Ambassador Ziltok. "Those are the names of the children who died," she said. 147 of them. They were given no warning. They were given no chance to surrender. They were given no opportunity to negotiate. They were simply killed. Ziltok shifted uncomfortably. "Madam President, I understand your grief." "But no," Kent said. "You do not understand. And that is why you keep making the same mistake." She stood up. The entire room stood with her. "Ambassador Ziltok, please deliver the following message to the Galactic Council and to the Veth Dominion. There will be no negotiations. There will be no apologies accepted. The Veth murdered human citizens, including 147 children, without cause or warning. Earth demands the unconditional surrender of all individuals responsible for this attack within 72 hours. If this demand is not met, humanity will come for them." The ambassador's dark eyes went wide. "Madam President, this is madness. You cannot be serious. I have never been more serious in my life. The Council cannot protect you if you choose this path. You will be alone against the most powerful empire in the galaxy." Kent looked at him with something that might have been pity. "We have always been alone, Ambassador. That is something your people never understood. When there is no one to save you, you learn to save yourself. And when someone murders your children, you do not ask for permission to seek justice. You take it." She gestured toward the door. "Thank you for your visit, Ambassador. Please, leave now." Ziltok stared at her for a long moment. Then he turned and walked out of the room without another word. When he was gone, Admiral Porter looked at the president. "Ma'am, you know what this means." "I do. We may not survive." Kent sat back down. She looked at the faces around the table, at the men and women who would lead humanity into the most dangerous fight of their existence. "Then we will die standing," she said. "But I do not intend to die. I intend to win." Across the galaxy, on ships and stations and worlds, humans heard their president's message. And something ancient woke up inside them, something that had been sleeping since the last great wars of Earth. It was anger. It was purpose. It was the iron determination of a species that had clawed its way to the stars through blood and fire and would not bow to murderers. The galaxy had told them to accept what had happened. The galaxy had told them to be reasonable, but humanity had made its choice, and there would be no going back. High Commander Krathel of the Veth Dominion sat on his throne and laughed. The sound echoed through his massive command chamber, bouncing off walls decorated with trophies from 100 conquered worlds. His advisors stood around him, their scaled bodies rigid with tension, waiting to see how their leader would respond to humanity's ultimatum. Krathel was enormous, even by Veth standards. His gray skin was covered in battle scars, and his yellow eyes burned with cruel intelligence. He had commanded the Dominion's fleets for 40 cycles. He had crushed rebellions, destroyed civilizations, and brought entire species to their knees. He had never lost. "Play it again," he ordered. A holographic image of President Kent appeared before him. He watched her deliver humanity's demands, her small human body standing straight, her voice steady. When she finished, he laughed again. 72 hours, he said. "These creatures give me 72 hours to surrender. Do they understand who we are? Do they understand what we have done?" One of his advisors stepped forward carefully. "My lord, perhaps we should consider a limited response. The humans are new to the galaxy. They do not understand. They understand nothing," Krathel interrupted. "That is why they will die." He rose from his throne and walked to a large window that looked out into space. Beyond the glass, dozens of Veth warships floated in formation, each one powerful enough to destroy a planet. "I will teach them," Krathel said. "I will burn their colonies one by one. I will kill their soldiers and their civilians. I will make their children watch their parents die. And when I reach their homeworld, I will turn it to ash and use the ruins as a warning to any other species that thinks they can defy the Veth." He turned back to his advisors. "Prepare a response. Broadcast it to all galactic channels. Let every species in the Council hear what happens to those who challenge us." The message was sent within the hour. Every ship, every station, every planet with a receiver heard High Commander Krathel's voice. "Humans," he said, "your arrogance amuses me. You are small, weak, and alone. You have no allies. You have no hope. In 72 hours, when your foolish deadline passes, I will come for you. Not to negotiate, not to accept surrender. I will come to kill every last one of you, to erase your species from existence, to make sure that no one in the galaxy ever again what happens to those who defy the Veth Dominion. Prepare yourselves. Your extinction begins soon." The transmission ended, and the galaxy fell silent. Far away, Commander Jack Harris watched the message on the bridge of the Vigilant. His crew stood around him, their faces grim but unafraid. They had all lost friends at Kepler Station. They had all made peace with what was coming. "Well," said Lieutenant Amy Cole, "he certainly talks a lot." Harris almost smiled. "He does. Let's see if he can back it up." Over the next 48 hours, something remarkable happened. Human ships began arriving from every corner of settled space. Military vessels came first, destroyers and cruisers and frigates, their crews ready for battle. Then came the civilian ships, cargo haulers, mining vessels, passenger liners. All of them had been retrofitted with weapons, their holds filled with ammunition and supplies. Engineer Ben Torres worked without sleep, welding gun mounts onto ships that had never been designed for combat. He was a small man with thick glasses and oil-stained hands, and he moved with a purpose that bordered on obsession. "We need more power converters," he muttered as Harris walked past him on the hangar deck. "We've given you everything." "We have," Harris replied. "Then find more. These ships need to fight, Commander. They need to hurt the people who killed our families." Harris put a hand on the engineer's shoulder. "They will, I promise." Pilot Kate Murphy drilled the volunteer squadrons until they could fly in formation without thinking. Most of them had never seen combat. Many of them had never fired a weapon in anger. But they learned fast because they had to. "The Veth expect us to break," Murphy told her students. "They expect us to run when we see their fleet. They've never fought anyone who refused to give up. That's our advantage. We're not going to run. We're not going to break. We're going to make them pay for every inch of space they try to take." Meanwhile, something unexpected was happening in the diplomatic channels. Ambassador Ziltok arrived at the human fleet in a small shuttle, alone and unarmed. He requested a meeting with Commander Harris. They met in the Vigilance conference room. Ziltok looked tired, his silver skin duller than before, his dark eyes heavy with something that might have been shame. "I have come to warn you," the ambassador said. "The Veth have destroyed civilizations older and more advanced than yours. They have weapons you cannot imagine. They have no mercy." "We know," Harris replied. "Then why are you doing this? Why throw away your lives for a gesture?" Harris leaned back in his chair. He studied the alien for a long moment before speaking. "When the Veth came for your world, Ambassador, did you fight?" Ziltok looked away. "We surrendered immediately. We thought it was the only way to survive." "And how has that worked out for you?" The ambassador was silent. "My people tried that once," Harris continued. "Centuries ago, on our home world, there were those who thought that surrendering to evil was better than dying. They learned the hard way that it doesn't work. Tyrants don't stop when you give them what they want. They take more. They always take more until there's nothing left." He leaned forward. "We're not fighting because we think we'll win. We're fighting because some things are worth dying for. Honor, justice, the memory of 2,000 people who were murdered for no reason. If we surrender, we lose all of that. And I would rather die with my honor intact than live as a slave." Ziltok was quiet for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely a whisper. "There are others who feel as you do. Other species who have been under the Veth boot for generations. They are afraid to act openly, but they have reached out through secret channels. They offer intelligence, information about Veth fleet movements and weaknesses." Harris raised an eyebrow. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because watching your people has reminded me of something I forgot long ago. Courage is not the absence of fear. It is the choice to stand up despite fear." The ambassador stood. "I cannot fight beside you. My people are too weak, too broken by centuries of submission. But I can help in other ways. I can be your eyes and ears in places you cannot go." Harris stood and extended his hand. Ziltok looked at it for a moment, confused by the gesture. Then he reached out and grasped it. "Thank you, Ambassador." Ziltok nodded. "Thank me after you survive." He paused at the door. "The 72 hours are almost over. The Veth fleet is already moving. Krathel himself is leading the attack. He wants to be there when humanity falls." Harris smiled, and there was nothing warm about it. "Then we'll make sure to give him a proper welcome." The ambassador left, and Harris returned to the bridge. Outside the viewport, the human fleet had assembled, hundreds of ships of all sizes, their lights blinking against the darkness of space. 72 hours had passed. The Veth had not surrendered, and now war had begun. The Veth fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel, like a wave of darkness spreading across the stars. There were hundreds of ships, massive warships with weapons that could crack moons, sleek destroyers designed for hunting smaller prey, and the flagship itself, a mountain of metal and fire that served as High Commander Krathel's personal throne. From the bridge of the Vigilant, Commander Jack Harris watched them come. His own fleet looked tiny in comparison, a collection of military vessels and converted civilian ships facing an armada that had never been defeated. All ships report ready, Commander, Lieutenant Amy Cole said from her station. Her voice was steady, but Harris could see the fear in her eyes. Everyone was afraid. That was natural. What mattered was what they did with that fear. Open a channel to the fleet, Harris ordered. The communication line crackled to life, and Harris spoke to every human who could hear him. This is Commander Harris. You all know why we're here. You all know what we're facing. The Veth think we're weak. They think we'll break and run. They think they can murder our families, and we'll just accept it. He paused. They're wrong. Today, we show them what happens when you underestimate humanity. Today, we fight. Not for glory, not for conquest, but for the 2,000 souls we lost at Kepler Station. For the children who will never grow up. For everyone who has ever been crushed under the Veth boot. Today, we teach the galaxy that humans don't negotiate with murderers. We make them pay. The channel erupted with cheers and battle cries from every ship in the fleet. Harris let them have their moment. Then he gave the order, all ships, engage. The human fleet surged forward, and the battle began. The first wave of Veth destroyers crashed into the human lines like a hammer striking glass. Ships exploded on both sides, filling the space between the fleets with fire and debris. The Veth had more firepower, but the humans were faster, more agile. They weaved through the enemy formation, striking at weak points, refusing to stay still long enough to be targeted. Pilot Kate Murphy led a squadron of fighters against a Veth cruiser 10 times their size. Her small ships darted around the massive vessel like insects attacking a giant, their weapons scoring hits on engines and weapon systems. Focus on the gun turrets, she ordered over the radio. Take out their eyes, and they can't hit us. One by one, the cruiser's weapons went dark. When the last turret exploded, Murphy pulled her squadron back and let the larger human ships finish the job. The cruiser broke apart in a ball of flame, and the fighters moved on to their next target. On the Vigilant, Lieutenant Cole coordinated intelligence from their new allies. The Fenari ambassador had delivered on his promise, providing detailed information about the Veth command structure. Commander, Cole said urgently, I've identified a weakness. Krathel rules through fear. His subordinates have never had to make decisions on their own. If we can take him out, their whole chain of command falls apart. Harris looked at the tactical display. The Veth flagship was at the center of their formation, surrounded by a wall of escorts. Getting to it seemed impossible. We'd need a miracle to reach that ship, he said. Cole smiled grimly. Or we'd need someone crazy enough to try. Sir, Captain Nick Bradley is on the line. He has a plan. Harris opened the channel. What do you have for me, Nick? Bradley's voice came through crackling with static. His ship was already taking fire. Commander, my cruiser is damaged. We've lost most of our main weapons. But we still have engines, and we still have boarding pods. You want to board the flagship? It's the only way. Get me close enough, and I'll take a team inside. We capture Krathel, and this war ends today. Harris looked at the tactical display again. Bradley's ship would have to fly directly into the heart of the enemy fleet. The odds of survival were almost zero. Nick, you know what you're asking. I know, Commander. But I also know what happens if we don't try. My sister was on Kepler Station. Her daughter was on my list of kids who died. I'm going in either way. Just give me cover. Harris closed his eyes for a moment. Then he made his decision. All ships focus fire on Sector 7. Clear a path for the Resolute. The human fleet concentrated its attack on a single point in the Veth formation. Ships poured everything they had into that one section of space, destroying escorts and forcing the Veth line to waver. Through that gap, Captain Bradley's damaged cruiser flew straight toward the enemy flagship. The Veth tried to stop him. Weapons fire tore at the Resolute from every direction. Holes appeared in the hull. Entire sections went dark. But the ship kept moving, driven by engines pushed beyond their limits and a crew that refused to give up. Bradley stood on the bridge as his ship fell apart around him. Smoke filled the air. Sparks flew from damaged consoles. Half his crew was dead or wounded. But through the viewport, he could see the Veth flagship growing larger. Launch boarding pods, he ordered. 12 pods shot from the Resolute's hull just before the ship took a direct hit to the reactor. The explosion lit up the space between the fleets, but by then, the pods were already latching onto the flagship's surface. Bradley led the assault team through the hull breach. The inside of the Veth ship was dark and massive, built for creatures much larger than humans. But the humans were faster and more determined. They moved through the corridors like ghosts, killing every enemy they encountered. The fighting was brutal. Veth warriors were strong and vicious, their claws and teeth designed for close combat. But the humans had come prepared. They fought with rifles and grenades and knives, with the savage fury of people who had nothing left to lose. Bradley took a hit to the shoulder halfway to the bridge. The pain was blinding, but he kept moving. Another soldier tied a bandage around the wound without stopping. "Almost there, Captain," she said. "Then let's finish this." They reached the bridge after 20 minutes of fighting. The doors were locked, but the engineer and their team planted charges and blew them open. Inside, High Commander Krathel waited with his personal guard. The fight was short but vicious. Krathel was a warrior himself, massive and deadly. He killed 2 of Bradley's soldiers before they brought him down, 3 humans tackling him at once while another slammed a stun baton into his neck. The High Commander fell to the floor, paralyzed but alive. Bradley stood over him, blood dripping from his shoulder, breathing hard. "You are beaten," Krathel snarled. "Kill me if you dare. Others will take my place." Bradley looked down at the alien who had ordered the death of 2,000 innocent people. He wanted nothing more than to pull his trigger and end it here. But that wasn't why they had come. "You're not getting out of this that easy," Bradley said. "You're going to stand trial for what you did. You're going to face justice. And then the whole galaxy is going to see what happens to murderers." He activated his communicator. "Commander Harris, package secured. The High Commander is in custody." Across the battle space, the word spread instantly. The Veth fleet saw their flagship go dark, saw their leader captured, and the iron discipline that had held them together shattered like glass. Ships began to flee. Others surrendered. The great armada that had never been defeated broke apart in panic. Commander Harris stood on the bridge of the Vigilant and watched the Veth run. Around him, his crew was cheering, crying, embracing each other. They had lost many ships. They had lost many friends. But they had one. "All ships," Harris said over the open channel, "pursue and accept surrenders. The war isn't over yet. But today, we've taught the galaxy a lesson they will never forget." The human fleet surged forward into Veth space. Behind them, the wreckage of the greatest battle in galactic history drifted silently in the void. And aboard a captured flagship, A tyrant sat in chains, waiting to face the justice he had never believed would come. The trial of High Commander Krathel took place on Earth, in a courtroom built specifically for the occasion. The chamber was enormous, designed to accommodate the massive alien and the thousands of observers who had come from across the galaxy to witness something that had never happened before. A Veth leader being held accountable for his crimes, Krathel sat in a specially constructed cage, his yellow eyes burning with hatred as he watched the proceedings. He had refused to speak since his capture, refused to acknowledge the authority of the court, refused to show any sign of regret for what he had done. But he could not refuse to listen. The prosecution presented evidence for 3 weeks. Recordings of the attack on Kepler Station, weapon signatures proving Veth responsibility, testimony from survivors of other Veth atrocities who had finally found the courage to speak. And through it all, the names of the dead were read aloud, one by one, until the weight of those 2,000 souls filled the courtroom like a physical presence. President Lavra Kent attended every day of the trial. She sat in the front row, her face calm, but her eyes never leaving the monster in the cage. When the verdict was finally announced, she was the first to stand, guilty on 2017 counts of murder. Guilty of crimes against humanity. Guilty of crimes against peace. The sentence was death. Krathel finally spoke then. He rose to his full height, his chains rattling, his voice echoing through the chamber. "You cannot kill me," he snarled. "I am Veth. I am eternal. My people will avenge me. They will burn your worlds and scatter your ashes across the galaxy." The judge, a stern woman named Carol Mason, looked at him without fear. "Your people have already surrendered," she said. "The Veth Dominion no longer exists. The worlds you conquered are free. The species you enslaved are rebuilding. And you will be remembered not as a conqueror, but as the tyrant who fell to a species half his size because he made the mistake of murdering their children." Krathel's face twisted with rage. But before he could respond, guards activated his restraints and he was taken away to await his execution. The galaxy watched all of this. Every species in the council, every world that had ever lived under the shadow of Veth aggression, saw the mighty High Commander, brought low by the small pink creatures from the planet called Earth, and something changed in them. Something that had been buried for so long they had forgotten it existed. Hope. Ambassador Ziltok came to Earth after the trial. He met with President Kent in her office, the same office where she had made the decision that changed everything. "I owe you an apology," the ambassador said. "When you first refused to negotiate, I thought you were foolish. I thought you would be destroyed. I thought I was watching the end of your species." Kent smiled slightly. "And now? Now I understand." Ziltok looked out the window at the city below. "The Fenari surrendered to the Veth centuries ago. We thought we were being smart, preserving our people, avoiding pointless death. But we lost something that day. We lost our spirit. We became servants, doing whatever the powerful demanded, never questioning, never fighting back." He turned to face her. "Watching humanity has reminded us of what we used to be. Your refusal to accept injustice, your willingness to risk everything for what is right, it has awakened something in my people. In many peoples." "What do you mean?" "The Fenari Council met yesterday. For the first time in recorded history, we have voted to refuse a demand from a foreign power. A neighboring empire wanted tribute, as they always have. We told them no." Kent's eyebrows rose. "And how did they respond?" "They threatened war." Ziltok smiled, and there was something different in his expression, something that had not been there before. "We told them to bring it. If the humans could face the Veth and win, we can face anyone." The ripples spread outward from Earth like waves in a pond. Species that had been conquered for generations began to resist. Slave revolts broke out on a dozen worlds. Coalition governments formed among the smaller powers. Mutual defense pacts modeled on human alliances. The old order of the galaxy, built on fear and submission, began to crumble. Commander Jack Harris did not stay to see most of this. After the war ended and the trials concluded, he took a small shuttle back to the site where Kepler Station had once stood. The debris had been cleared away, and construction crews were building a new station, larger and stronger than before. But before the new structure could rise, there was one thing that had to be done first. Harris walked through the station's memorial garden, a quiet space filled with flowers from 100 human worlds. At the center stood a wall of black stone, and carved into that stone were 2,000 names. Each name had a small light beside it that burned constantly, powered by a solar collector that would keep the flames alive for centuries. He found Danny's name near the middle of the wall. His brother, his best friend, the kid who used to follow him around and ask a million questions and dream about exploring the stars. Harris placed his hand on the stone and closed his eyes. He stood there for a long time, not speaking, not crying, just remembering. "We did it, Danny," he finally whispered. "We made them pay. Every single one of them. They'll never hurt anyone again." He opened his eyes and looked around the garden. Families were walking among the flowers, reading names, leaving mementos. Children played on the grass while their parents watched. Life was returning to this place that had known such terrible death. A young girl walked up to Harris. She couldn't have been more than 6 years old, with bright eyes and dark hair tied in ribbons. She looked up at him curiously. "Are you the commander?" she asked. "The one who caught the bad alien?" Harris crouched down to her level. "I helped. A lot of people helped. My mommy says you saved us. She says the bad aliens were going to hurt everyone, but you stopped them. We tried our best." The girl smiled and held out a small flower she had picked from the garden. "This is for you. Thank you for being brave." Harris took the flower gently. Something in his chest loosened, something that had been tight since the day he first saw the ruins of Kepler Station. He looked at this child who was alive because humans had refused to accept evil, who would grow up in a galaxy where bullies no longer ruled through fear. "You're welcome," he said. "Just promise me something." "What?" "When you grow up, if you ever see someone being hurt, if you ever see someone doing something wrong, don't look away. Don't be afraid. Stand up for what's right, even if it's scary. Can you do that?" The girl nodded seriously. "I promise." She ran back to her mother, and Harris watched her go. Then he stood up and took one last look at the memorial wall. 2,000 names. 2,000 lights burning in the darkness. 2,000 reminders of why humanity had fought and what they had fought for. He walked back to his shuttle, the small flower still in his hand. Behind him, the new Kepler station rose toward the sky. Around him, the galaxy was changing, old empires falling, new alliances rising, the balance of power shifting toward those who had the courage to stand up for themselves. Humanity had paid a heavy price. They had lost ships and soldiers and friends. They had nearly lost everything. But they had sent a message that would echo across the stars for generations to come. When you murder innocents, when you slaughter children, when you expect the weak to bow and the frightened to submit, remember what happened to the Veth. Remember the small pink creatures who came from a little blue planet on the edge of the galaxy. Remember what they did when told to accept injustice. They said no, and they won. The galaxy had learned its lesson. Humans don't negotiate with murderers. Not now, not ever. And any species foolish enough to forget that lesson would find out the same way the Veth did, the hard way.